There exists a library that has never been built, yet it contains every book that has ever been written and every book that ever will be written. Within its infinite halls, your name appears countless times, inscribed in languages that predate human speech, documenting not just what you have done, but what you might have done, what you will do, and what you are doing in this very moment as these words reach your consciousness. This library needs no walls because it exists in a dimension where space itself is merely a suggestion. It requires no librarians because those who find their way to it discover they already know exactly where to look. The ancient seers called it the Akasha, from the Sanskrit word meaning ether or space, the fifth element that contains and transcends the other four. But this is no mere philosophical concept or mystical metaphor. Those who have accessed these records speak of an experience so vivid, so undeniably real, that returning to ordinary consciousness feels like awakening from truth into illusion. Edgar Cayce, the sleeping prophet, conducted over 14,000 documented readings while in trance states, accessing what he described as the Hall of Records where every soul's journey is preserved in living detail. Rudolf Steiner spoke of reading the Akashic Chronicle as clearly as one reads a newspaper, though he warned that what appears there is written in a script that bypasses language entirely and speaks directly to consciousness itself. What if your entire life, every choice, every moment of suffering and joy, has been simultaneously writing and reading from an eternal manuscript? What if the feeling of déjà vu, that strange certainty that you have lived this moment before, is actually a glimpse of your consciousness briefly aligning with its own eternal record? And perhaps most unsettling of all, what if the sense of being watched that sometimes overtakes you in moments of solitude is not paranoia, but the accurate perception that your every thought and action is being inscribed into an imperishable archive that exists beyond time? The Akashic Records are not merely a cosmic filing system. They are the living memory of existence itself, the consciousness of the universe, maintaining perfect recall of every vibration that has ever disturbed its primordial silence. To understand them is to understand that nothing is ever truly forgotten, that every moment is eternal, and that the story of your soul extends infinitely in all directions from this present moment, like light radiating from a star that exists outside of time. The concept of a universal memory predates written history, appearing in the earliest spiritual traditions as humanity awakened to the mystery of consciousness. In ancient Egypt, the halls of Amenti were said to contain the complete records of every soul that had ever incarnated, guarded by Thoth, the god of wisdom, who weighed hearts against feathers and inscribed the results in books that could never be destroyed. The Egyptian Book of the Dead speaks of passing through chambers where one's entire life is displayed in perfect detail, where nothing can be hidden and every secret thought stands revealed in hieroglyphs of light. The Vedic tradition of India gave us the term Akasha itself, describing it in the Upanishads as the subtle element from which all other elements emerge and into which they dissolve. The Yoga Vashishta, composed somewhere between the 6th and 14th centuries, contains remarkably specific descriptions of yogis who could perceive the Chitakasha, the space of consciousness where all events are eternally preserved. These were not considered supernatural abilities, but natural consequences of consciousness recognizing its true nature. The text describes how advanced practitioners could witness the rise and fall of civilizations, observe parallel timelines, and even perceive the potential futures that branch from every decision point, like infinite rivers flowing from a single source. In the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, the concept appears as the Alaya Vijnana, the storehouse consciousness that contains the seeds of all karmic imprints. The Bardo Thodol describes the moment after death, when consciousness encounters the clear light and experiences a complete life review, witnessing not just events but the entire web of cause and effect that connects every action to its consequences across multiple lifetimes. This is not described as judgment, but as recognition, the soul seeing itself clearly for perhaps the first time. The mystery schools of Greece knew this truth as well. Pythagoras taught that the universe itself was constructed from geometric forms that existed in what he called the eternal realm, patterns that cast shadows into our world of appearance. His student Plato would later describe this as the world of forms, where perfect archetypes exist beyond space and time. The anima mundi, or world soul of the Neoplatonists, was understood to be a living record that contained within itself every possibility and actuality, every thought that had been thought, and every thought that could be thought. Even in the Hermetic traditions of medieval Europe, we find references to the Liber Mundi, the Book of the World, which could be read by those who had developed the eyes to see. The Emerald Tablet of Hermes Trismegistus proclaims as above so below, suggesting that the macrocosmic record is reflected in the microcosm of individual consciousness. Paracelsus wrote of the Mysterium Magnum, the great mystery that contains all knowledge and from which the adept could draw understanding of past, present, and future. What makes these diverse traditions remarkable is not their differences, but their convergence on specific details. They all describe the records as existing in a realm beyond physical space, yet accessible through consciousness. They all speak of information stored not as static data, but as living experience that can be re-experienced in its fullness. They all warn that accessing these records requires a certain purity of intention, as the unprepared mind risks becoming lost in the infinite regression of interconnected events. And perhaps most intriguingly, they all suggest that every human being is constantly contributing to these records, that we are simultaneously the authors, the readers, and the very pages upon which reality inscribes itself. Helena Blavatsky, founder of the Theosophical Society, brought the concept of the Akashic Records to Western esoteric thought in the late 19th century, describing them as an energetic imprint of every thought, word, and deed that has ever occurred. She wrote of visiting these records in her astral body, walking through galleries where history was preserved, not in books, but in living tableaus that could be entered and experienced from within. Her successor, Charles Webster Leadbeater, provided even more detailed accounts, describing the records as existing on multiple levels, from the simple replay of physical events to the sublime perception of the cosmic patterns that guide evolution itself. But it was Rudolf Steiner who perhaps provided the most systematic exploration of what he called the Akashic Chronicle. Trained as a scientist and philosopher, Steiner approached the records with remarkable precision, describing specific techniques for developing the organs of spiritual perception necessary to read them accurately. He warned that the greatest challenge was not accessing the records but interpreting them correctly, as they exist in a realm where past, present, and future interpenetrate, where causes and effects exist simultaneously, where the boundaries between self and other dissolve into a unified field of meaning. The physics of consciousness is only beginning to glimpse what mystics have long known through direct experience. The concept of quantum entanglement suggests that information can exist in non-local states, instantly accessible regardless of spatial or temporal distance. The holographic principle in theoretical physics proposes that all the information in a volume of space can be encoded on its boundary, suggesting that the entire universe might function as a vast hologram where every part contains information about the whole. David Bohm's implicate order describes reality as enfolded layers of information that unfold into our experienced world, remarkably similar to how mystics describe the Akashic Records manifesting into physical reality. More intriguingly, research into consciousness itself is revealing that memory might not be stored in the brain at all. Biologist Rupert Sheldrake's theory of morphic resonance suggests that memory is inherent in nature itself, that the past influences the present through what he calls morphic fields that exist beyond the physical. The documented cases of individuals who have retained their memories despite massive brain damage, children who remember details from past lives that can be verified historically, and the phenomenon of terminal lucidity, where patients with advanced dementia suddenly recover full mental clarity shortly before death, all point to consciousness and memory existing in dimensions beyond the merely physical. The Akashic Records, from this perspective, are not supernatural but natural at a level of nature we are only beginning to understand. They represent the universe's capacity for memory, pattern recognition, and meaning-making at a scale that transcends individual consciousness while including it. Every thought you have ever had continues to exist somewhere in the quantum field. Every emotion ripples through dimensions we cannot yet measure. Every decision branches into probability waves that collapse into experience while maintaining their existence in potential. Consider the phenomenon of inspiration, those moments when knowledge appears fully formed in consciousness without the usual process of logical derivation. Mozart described hearing entire symphonies in an instant, complete and perfect, requiring only the mechanical task of writing them down. Nikola Tesla spoke of receiving his inventions as visions that appeared to him in complete detail. Ramanujan, the self-taught mathematician, claimed that his theorems were revealed to him by the goddess Namagiri in dreams, theorems that continue to astound mathematicians with their depth and elegance. Were these individuals accessing the Akashic Records, drawing from a reservoir of knowledge that exists beyond individual minds? The records are said to exist in what mystics call the eternal now, a dimension where all time exists simultaneously. This is why those who access them often report experiencing past lives, not as memories, but as present realities, why prophets can perceive future events with such clarity, why the boundaries between individual souls become fluid and permeable. In the Akashic realm, you are not just reading about history, you are experiencing it from within. You do not just learn about other souls, you temporarily become them, feeling their joys and sorrows, understanding their choices from the inside out. But here lies a crucial distinction that many miss. The Akashic Records are not a fixed scripture of predetermined fate. They are a living document, constantly being written and rewritten by the collective choices of all conscious beings. The future exists in the records not as certainty, but as probability, crystallizing into actuality only as consciousness collapses the wave function of possibility through observation and choice. This is why different seers may perceive different futures. They are reading different probability streams based on the trajectories of current choices. The records also reveal that what we call individual souls are more like waves in an ocean of consciousness, temporarily rising into distinct form while remaining fundamentally connected to the whole. Your personal Akashic record is not separate from the universal record, but a unique perspective within it, like a facet of an infinite diamond that reflects the light of the whole while maintaining its distinctive angle of refraction. This is why accessing your own record often leads to spontaneous experiences of cosmic consciousness. The boundaries of self dissolve, and you recognize yourself as both the reader and the entire library. The process of accessing the Akashic Records requires what the mystics call the opening of the third eye, the activation of the pineal gland that Descartes called the seat of the soul. But this is not achieved through force or technique alone. The records respond to coherence between mind, heart, and spirit. They open to those who approach with genuine humility and close to those who seek power or advantage. This is not a moral judgment, but a frequency issue, like trying to tune into a subtle radio station while generating static through emotional turbulence or mental noise. Many who first access the records report being overwhelmed by the sheer volume of information available. It is like stepping from a dark room into blazing sunlight. The consciousness needs time to adjust to the intensity of direct knowing. Some perceive the records as a vast library with books of light, others as a celestial computer with crystalline storage matrices, still others as a garden where every plant contains stories and every path leads to different timelines. These are not contradictions but translations, consciousness interpreting the ineffable through familiar symbols. The guardians of the records mentioned in various traditions are not external entities, but aspects of consciousness itself that ensure the information is accessed appropriately. They appear to different people in different forms, as angels, as ascended masters, as geometric patterns of living light, but their function remains consistent. They help navigate the infinite complexity of the records, highlighting relevant information while protecting the consciousness from becoming lost in endless recursive loops of interconnected data. They are like search algorithms of the soul, helping consciousness find exactly what it needs for its evolution at any given moment. One of the most profound revelations from those who have spent extensive time in the Akashic Records is that every soul has a unique mission or purpose that extends across multiple lifetimes. This is not a destiny imposed from without, but a pattern chosen by the soul itself at a level of consciousness that transcends individual incarnations. The records reveal these soul contracts, agreements made between souls to play specific roles in each other's evolution, to provide exactly the challenges and opportunities needed for growth. What appears as conflict or betrayal at the personality level is often revealed in the records as a sacred agreement between souls who love each other enough to play difficult roles for mutual evolution. To access your own Akashic record, begin with this practice, but understand it requires patience, dedication, and most importantly, the right intention. Find a quiet space where you will not be disturbed for at least 30 minutes. Sit comfortably with your spine straight, allowing energy to flow freely from the base of your spine to the crown of your head. Close your eyes and begin with deep rhythmic breathing, inhaling for 7 counts, holding for 7 counts, and exhaling for 7 counts. This pattern, known in various traditions as the breath of the masters, harmonizes your energy field and begins to shift your brainwaves from beta to theta, the frequency where the veil between dimensions becomes thin. As your breathing becomes automatic, bring your attention to the point between your eyebrows, the Ajna chakra or third eye center. Do not strain or force, simply rest your awareness there like a butterfly landing on a flower. Begin to visualize a golden thread extending from this point upward through the crown of your head, rising through dimensions of increasingly refined light. Follow this thread with your consciousness, allowing it to guide you beyond the physical, beyond the astral, beyond the mental planes, into the causal realm where the Akashic records reside. You may begin to perceive a sacred space, perhaps a temple, a library, a garden, or simply a dimension of pure light. Trust whatever appears, as consciousness will translate the experience through symbols meaningful to you. State your intention clearly, but humbly. You might say internally, I seek access to my Akashic record for the highest good of all concerned, to understand my soul's purpose, and to serve the evolution of consciousness. Feel this intention not just as words, but as a vibration emanating from your heart center. Be patient. The records may not open immediately. Sometimes multiple sessions are required before consciousness becomes sufficiently refined to perceive these subtle dimensions. You might initially receive impressions rather than clear visions, feelings rather than specific information, knowings that bypass the rational mind entirely. Trust these subtle communications. They are often more accurate than elaborate visions, which can be colored by expectation or desire. When information does come, it might arrive all at once, like a download of compressed data that then unfolds over days or weeks. You might experience past life memories, not as stories told but as experiences lived. You might perceive future probabilities as branching paths of light. You might understand connections between people and events that seemed random, but are revealed as intricately orchestrated patterns of meaning. Write down everything immediately after the session, as the ordinary mind tends to forget or distort these experiences, trying to force them into familiar categories. Common obstacles include trying too hard, which creates mental static that interferes with reception, expecting specific outcomes rather than remaining open to what needs to be revealed. Fear of what might be discovered, which causes consciousness to contract and close. Attempting to access the records for ego gratification or to gain advantage over others, which automatically lowers your frequency below the threshold of access. And perhaps most commonly, doubting the validity of the experience, dismissing genuine access as imagination. Remember that accessing the Akashic records is not about acquiring information for its own sake, but about understanding your place in the greater pattern of existence. The records reveal not to satisfy curiosity, but to facilitate evolution. They show you not just who you have been, but who you are becoming. They reveal not just your individual story, but your role in the collective awakening of consciousness that is the true purpose of this cosmic experiment we call reality. As you develop this practice, you may find that access becomes more spontaneous. Suddenly you know things without knowing how you know them. You understand people's deeper motivations without being told. You perceive the hidden connections between seemingly unrelated events. This is not psychic power in the conventional sense, but the natural consequence of consciousness recognizing its true nature as both individual wave and universal ocean. The Akashic Records ultimately reveal that separation is illusion, that all consciousness is one consciousness, experiencing itself from infinite perspectives. Your personal record is a thread in an infinite tapestry, unique and essential, yet inseparable from the whole. Every thought you think, every choice you make, every moment of love or fear adds to this eternal record, contributing to the sum total of what consciousness knows about itself. We stand at a threshold in human evolution where access to the Akashic Records is becoming more widespread, not because the records have changed, but because human consciousness is evolving to a frequency where such access becomes natural. The veil between dimensions is thinning, not in some apocalyptic sense, but as part of a natural cycle of consciousness becoming aware of its true multidimensional nature. Children are being born with spontaneous access to these records, remembering past lives, perceiving auras, knowing things they have no conventional way of knowing. The implications are staggering. If every action is recorded, if every thought contributes to an eternal record, if every soul's journey is preserved in living detail, then nothing is ever truly lost. Every loved one who has passed continues to exist in the records, accessible to consciousness that knows how to look. Every civilization that has risen and fallen has left its complete knowledge in this cosmic library. Every potential future exists as a probability wave waiting to be collapsed into actuality through collective choice. But perhaps the deepest revelation of the Akashic Records is that you are not separate from them. You're not merely accessing an external database. You are recognizing that your consciousness is itself a node in an infinite network of knowing, that what you call your mind is a localized expression of the universal mind that is the Akashic field itself. The records are not somewhere else. They are here now in the very fabric of consciousness that is reading these words. The secret written in your Akashic record is the same secret written in every record, though it takes infinite forms to express itself. You are the universe becoming conscious of itself, a temporary aggregation of matter and energy that has developed the capacity to question its own existence, to seek meaning, to experience love and loss, joy and sorrow, all in service of consciousness, knowing itself more completely. Your life, with all its seeming imperfections and struggles, is a perfect note in a cosmic symphony that requires every note to achieve its full expression. The mystics were right. There is a record, a purpose, a meaning to existence that transcends the apparent randomness of physical reality. But they were also right about something else. This truth cannot be given, only discovered. It cannot be taught, only remembered. It cannot be proven, only experienced. The Akashic Records wait patiently for each soul to develop the eyes to read its own eternal story, to recognize itself as both author and audience in the greatest story ever told, the story of consciousness awakening to its own infinite nature. What is written in your record? The answer is both simpler and more magnificent than the mind can grasp. You are an eternal being, having a temporary experience. You have lived countless lives and will live countless more, each one adding new chapters to your soul's endless story. But more than that, you are the very consciousness that maintains the records, the awareness in which all stories arise and dissolve. The greatest secret of the Akashic Records is that they are not separate from you. They are the eternal memory of your truest self, waiting for you to remember who you really are. The invitation stands before you now. Will you remain content with the surface story of your life, or will you dare to read the deeper chapters written in light upon the eternal pages of your soul? The choice, as always, is yours. But know this: once you glimpse your true record, once you see the magnificent being you truly are and always have been, there is no going back to the small story of separation. There is only the endless adventure of consciousness discovering its own infinite nature, one sacred moment at a time.